So lengthening and shortening are other ways in which you can adjust a pattern. So typically you find this on your bodice because the neck to waist length is available on the pattern. But you also find it on skirts or on trousers. Sometimes, in fact, you've got two lengthening shortening lines, and you commonly find them in sleeves as well. So the length between your sleeve and your wrist will differ from person to person. So you may need to lengthen or shorten. Here I've got an example of a sleeve, and you can see that these double lines are representing the optimum point in which you would lengthen or shorten it. So I'm going to show you how to work out the calculations for that. So the best thing to do is to take a tape measure and to measure the sleeve depending on your different size. Now, what you would need to factor in is that the pattern will usually have already added the seam allowance along the top and the hem allowance on the bottom of the sleeve itself. So you would need to take those calculations away from the overall length. So once you've worked that out, you would want to measure from the shoulder point down to the wrist, which is where that little ball is. And you want to measure with your arm crooked. And you want to measure on the outside of your arm. Now, this is quite hard to do on your own, so you might need to get somebody to help you. So let's say, for example, that let's take the 5/8 away from there, and 1.25 inches from there. So this sleeve works out at 17.25 inches. So I'm just going to write that down. Okay, now so let's say, for example, that your sleeve length is 16.25. So we need to reduce the length by 1 inch. What you need to do is you need to take that measurement, which is 1 inch, and you want to divide that by 2. Okay, and that gives you obviously 1/2 inch. So what we're going to do is we're going to fold that line up 1/2 inch. Now, one thing that's probably worth noting is that there is a top and a bottom line, and there's a lot of debate in the pattern industry as to whether you should fold from the first line or the bottom line. No one really knows or can agree on it. So in this instance, I'm just going to be consistent and work with that bottom line. So I've measured 1/2 inch from the bottom line. I'm just going to actually put a couple of markers on the sleeve there. So I'm now going to fold on that line and at the point that I've marked. Okay, and the reason why I've done it at 1/2 inch and not a full inch is because your paper's doubled up, which means you've got 2 1/2 inches there, which are making that full inch adjustment. Okay, and once you're happy with it, you can use the trusted masking tape to place over your pattern, and away you go. Now, if you have slight indents where your pattern is, this is where again you would use your pattern master to just taper those lines to make sure that everything is cut smoothly. You don't end up with slightly funny edges. And that's how you shorten a pattern piece. So now on to lengthening. So again, we've worked out that this is this sleeve length minus the seam allowance is 17.25 inches. So if we had a longer arm that we needed to adjust to, let's say 18.25, just for simplicity's sake, what you're going to need to do is again work with these double lines. Now I'm going to take a rotary cutter and a ruler, and but you obviously can use a pair of scissors, paper scissors for this. I'm going to slice at this lengthening and shortening line, so I'm actually pulling the pattern apart. Okay, so what I need to do is place a piece of tracing paper, and you'll find that with sewing patterns there's always excess around the outside. It doesn't have to be a brand new piece. You can recycle a lot of the paper that's already in the pattern. So I'm going to attach that using masking tape, and again I've used the bottom edge of the lengthening shortening lines because it's consistent with how I use them. And we want to then measure an inch from the bottom. Now obviously this is the this might not be an inch, it might be 2 inches, it might be 1.25 inches. It just depends on what the difference between the pattern and your actual measurements are. Okay, so once I've done that, I'm now going to realign the pattern. Now before I stick this, so I've aligned it up against those markers there. Before I stick this down, I'm just going to place a ruler up against those grain lines to make sure that everything is sitting exactly where it should be, and then I can tape the lower level back together. So what we've done there is we've lengthened it all by 1 inch, and again I'm going to use the pen to just taper those edges to give you some really clean lines. And that's how you lengthen.